Today, we're diving into something both elegant and practical: creating hover animations in Flutter. Hover animations are perfect for making your UI more interactive, especially for web and desktop applications. Imagine buttons that change color when hovered over, or cards that lift slightly, inviting users to click on them. All right, set up your Flutter project. If you don't already have a project, create a new one. Once your project is ready, open it in your editor. First, clean up main.dart and add some boilerplate code. This sets up a simple material app with a main screen called Hover Animation Screen. Now, let's create that screen in a new file, hoveranimationscreen.dart. Here's the structure. The hoverable card will be the widget we'll animate. This keeps our code modular and reusable. Let's move on to building the hover interaction. Hoverable card widget will be responsible for handling the hover effect and displaying the content. Here's the code. Inside, we have is hovered variable. It's a Boolean that will be set to true when the user hovers over the card and false otherwise. The main widget we're using here is called MouseRegion. This widget essentially wraps our card and detects any mouse interactions like entering or exiting its area. We've defined two parameters for MouseRegion: onEnter and onExit. These functions get called when the user's mouse enters or exits the card, respectively. Inside onEnter, we simply set is hovered variable to true using setState. This tells Flutter that the hover state has changed and it needs to rebuild the widget with the updated visuals. Similarly, in onExit, we set is hovered back to false to indicate the mouse has left the card's area. Now, the coolest part, the animation. We're using an animated container widget to smoothly transition between different card states based on the hover interaction. This widget takes a few important parameters. First, there's duration. This defines how long the animation should take, set to 300 milliseconds in our case for a quick and snappy effect. Next, we have curve. This determines the easing behavior of the animation. We're using curves.easeOut for a smooth and subtle scaling effect. The heart of the animation lies within the transform property. This is where we define how the card visually transforms on hover. When is hovered is true, we scale the card up by 110% on both axes, creating a zoom effect. On the other hand, when is hovered is false, the transform simply uses the identity matrix, keeping the card at its original size. Now, let's move on to the card's visual appearance. We're using box decoration to define the card's background color, border radius, and shadow. The color property changes based on the hover state. When hovered, it uses a nice blue accent color, and for the default state, it uses a lighter gray shade. We're also using border radius to give the card a nice rounded corner look. And finally, the shadow effect. We're conditionally adding a box shadow based on the hover state. On hover, we use a slightly darker blue shadow with a bit more blur to create a lifted and highlighted effect. In the default state, we use a lighter shadow for a subtle depth effect. Lastly, we have the content of the card itself. We're using a simple center widget to position the text content in the middle. Inside, text widget displays the message "Hover Me" with some styles applied. The text color also changes dynamically based on the hover state, switching between white on hover and black for the default state. So, this code essentially creates a card that zooms slightly, changes color, and adjusts its shadow to provide a nice interactive hover effect. You can customize the animation duration, scaling factor, colors, and shadows to achieve different looks and functionalities for your Flutter projects. Unfortunately, directly testing MouseRegion's onEnter and onExit events in the mobile device isn't straightforward due to the nature of touch-based interactions. So, these kind of animations would be practical for web applications. Let's test this in the browser. When we hover over the card, it should scale up, change color, and look more inviting. Let's make this animation even more engaging by adding a rotation effect. Update the transform property to add the rotation. Rotate Z function rotates the card around the Z-axis by 0.1 radians. You can adjust this value to control the rotation angle. A larger value will result in a more pronounced rotation. Now, when you hover, the card not only scales up but also tilts slightly, creating a more dynamic feel. You can also animate the text color with a tween for finer control. Wrap the text widget inside an animated default text style. This widget allows us to animate the text style properties, like color, font size, etc., smoothly over a specified duration. Here's what the parameters within this widget control. Duration. This is set to 700 milliseconds, which is higher than the animation duration of the card itself. So, this text animation would be slightly delayed. Style. This defines the text style properties that will be animated. In this case, it includes color, font size, and font weight, just like before. The color will change based on the hover state, just as it did previously. The key difference is that now the color change, and potentially any other style changes you might add later, will be animated smoothly over 700 milliseconds, creating a more polished and visually appealing effect. Essentially, instead of the text color instantly switching between black and white on hover, it will now gradually transition between those colors. We can see the text animation is more subtle and visually pleasing. Play around with these tweaks to make the interaction truly stand out. And show off your creativity in the comments section. And there you have it, a sleek and interactive hover animation in Flutter. This technique is ideal for web and desktop apps where user engagement matters. Imagine applying this to buttons, product cards, or even entire sections of your UI. If you enjoyed this tutorial, give it a like, subscribe for more awesome Flutter content, and let me know in the comments what animations you'd like to see next. Until next time, keep coding and stay creative.